shows that in some cultural contexts, right, there is a high and accepted distance between a subordinate and their manager. Okay? Countries such as the Philippines, Russia, India have fairly high Hofstede's power distance indexes. Okay? This means that the distance between a subordinate and a manager is quite high. This has implicit issues. It means that when I talk to you, there's a subservient relationship, nature that's occurring. It also means that you're not going to go above my head. You're not going to take initiative by yourself. On the flip side, we have countries like the US and Australia. We're actually pretty close there in the middle, where it's fairly middling. And then we have countries such as Sweden, such as Israel, some of the Scandinavian countries, which have a very, very low Hofstede's distance. Now, interestingly, I've done training in some of these countries, and they're the only countries where being a trainer, standing up, has very little value in terms of that relationship. I have, in this context, a relative amount of authority over you. Okay? So, just quickly, can I get everyone to stand up? Yep, now you can all sit down again. See? All right. Now, some of you knew what was about to happen, so well done. You saw through my transparent Australia or New Zealand? Brilliant. Okay, what's the first thing on the left? Flip-flops, great. I don't call them flip-flops. I got very embarrassed the other day. I call them thongs. Yep. Depends on how distributed. If you have good video conferencing technologies and you're all in the same time zone or within 2 or 3 hours of each other, sure, have one meeting that have a big screen, you're sitting there, you're talking, and you're sharing and communicating that way. The minute you're across time zones or you don't have good technologies, then yes, you'll hold individual communities of practice. This team are all going to have separate communities of practice. Also, 7 plus or minus 2. If you have 10,000 software developers being part of your community of practice, you're not going to have one meeting for that. That would be completely unmanageable. You'd have 1,000. So it's like 7 plus or minus 2 is a good size for a community of practice. You can go up to about 20. I don't have. Slightly side note, if people don't mind. Let's actually talk about the mathematics of communication. Now, that sounds boring. Bear with me.
Let's look at Agile and Waterfall. As Matthew has said, in a Waterfall context, engineering, very highly structured. The outcomes need to be clearly defined up front. In an Agile context, and especially in the software industry, we know that we work in a chaotic environment. Change occurs throughout the process. We don't have that luxury of upfront design, because if we do that, well, suddenly a change will occur and all that work has been wasted. And waste is something that we want to try and avoid as much as possible. So, perfect timing.
Yes.
So, iteration 1 is now complete. That is a correct statement, is not, Mr. Engineer?
Go on.
Lovely. I'm going to get, so, excuse me.
So now we're just going to take a little bit of a diversion from our sort of main slide of the conversation and go to something Evan wanted me to make up. So,
all right. So I'm the customer or the project or the product owner. So I have a series of requirements. I have a product backlog. These exist within the context of a wider project. Now, side note, 3D printing is not the fastest thing in the world, so within a 40-minute talk, we had to pick something that was fairly small. You may not be able to see this very well. This is a...
That device is an AVR programmer. It's basically replacing the development board, so you can hook your computer up to a little microcontroller used in robotics, 3D printing devices, things like that.
Okay, so I have an AVR programmer. This is important to me for some reason. Let's just pretend it is. I have a requirement. This little board, in and of itself, is meaningless to me. All right? It does something, but what am I going to mount it on? I have a wider project. So requirement 375 user story. Okay. As a robot, I need a mount for my AVR programmer so that I can protect the electronics. Okay. It's a user story. This here was printed over the last 10 minutes. Okay. You may not be able to see it particularly well, and I'll let this come around. It's a small box. You can see here, it fits. That's what it's a box. Things are meant to fit in boxes. All right. There's
exactly what he asked for.
There we go. Okay. So we can see that there's a little gap here for the USB cable to plug in. Does that work? Here's my user acceptance testing. Yes, oh, hang on a second. You know what? I'm not so happy with this. The little electronic, the AVR programmer isn't actually secured in this box. So is it possible to do something about that?
It is. It wasn't in your spec document, though.
We like change, don't we?
All right. So if you can just give me, I think I timed this to about 2 minutes last time. So Evan was going to freestyle.
This is the Fortune 50 companies from 1985 through to 2013. You can see that already we have 10 or so companies who have dropped down to zero. They've been bought out or acquired, forcibly merged, split apart by federal regulation. Since 1985, of the top 50 companies in America, 27 of them no longer exist in the form that they were in 1985, and many of them don't exist at all. All right? This is why leadership isn't showing. Anyone here does mathematics? If I say order n squared, do you know what I mean? Some of you? In mathematics, there are types of functions. An order 1, this is an order 1 function, communication. Doesn't matter how many of you are in the room. Could be one of you, could be 1,000 of you. Okay? It will take the same amount of time to send the same message. Okay? An order n conversation, okay, will increase linearly with the number of people in the conversation. Okay? Good example of that is a conversation. Okay? We're going to talk. All right? 2 of us will talk. 3 of us, we're going to send a message. Your daily stand-up is an order n. Everyone's just saying the same thing. You add 10 more people to a daily stand-up, and it'll take twice as long. You add another 10, it'll take the same amount of time again. Everyone's got a minute to talk. Right? That's why team sizes in Agile are 7 plus or minus 2. It's not because 7 plus or minus 2 is some number someone dreamed up. It's because any larger than that, and communication becomes an overhead rather than an actual mechanism for improvement. Actually, surprisingly, that's what I do more often than not. Internal customers, yes, you can order them, or the boss can say, you must go do this training. But if you're an Agile shop, if you're saying, look, we are going to do this wonderful project for you, you're going to be in control of the delivery. However, you need to understand what your responsibilities for this are. You're going to pay us $500,000 to develop something? Well, surely you can afford half a day to come and learn what you need to do to make sure that delivers right. First of all, recruit for an Agile team. Don't just recruit, he's a software developer, great. Go, well, you're a software developer, but can you work in an Agile environment? Yes, no. If the answer is no, don't hire them. So your recruitment strategy changes from do they have the skills to do they have the skills and do they have the personality? A concept that we have of switching sides. A product owner, a customer gives you a product owner to say, this is my representative to the project. But after a couple of iterations, the product owner becomes the team's representative to the customer. And that's actually, I think, quite important to that. The product owner is your voice to the customer to manage those expectations.
I'm a manager, an advisor, an author. I was a developer a long time ago. But one of the things that I learned about how to be a good developer is it's not about the software. The software is the least part of anything that you're trying to create. So let's look at different ways that we can hold meetings. What about an agendaless meeting? What about a meeting with an objective? I'm going to go into this meeting. I'm not going to have an agenda, a list of dot points that we need to cover. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to say, we're going to be in this room until we come to an agreement on whether we're using Perl or Python.
And we'll sit there until we have, that's the purpose.
We talk about redundancies in any sort of organizational transformation. This is not a dirty word. This is something that you work with them about. It shouldn't be a surprise. If you're going towards an agile approach, then they should know 12, 24 months in advance how things are going. And if they can't operate in that environment, it should be obvious to them as well as to the executives of the organization whether or not this is working. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay? This is off-maligned, is not necessarily accurate, but it is a model of human motivation. Okay? At the bottom, we have the pure physiological motivations: food, water, shelter. Okay? This is where your minimum wage employment comes in. Okay? If I'm a chaiwala, if I'm just there serving tea, then all I'm getting out of my job is food, shelter, the basic physiological needs. But we're intelligent. Okay? We go into software programming, we go into development, we go into business because we have drives, we have motivations, we are interested, we are passionate about the work that we do. The more passion that can actually be applied to your work, this level of self-actualization, then we have our agile business management or our agile approach to work. I want you to be empowered. I want you to come to work, not just because you get a paycheck, but because if your senior executives can't prove that they have failed, can't prove that they have managed failure, then should they get their bonus? I don't think so. Because unless they can prove they have learnt, unless they have proved that they have identified something that is performing poorly and improved it, then they've not made any substantial benefit to the organization. Failure is a positive KPI. That's my recommendation to you.